The independent inquiry into child sexual abuse ran for 7 years and took evidence from 7,000 victims and survivors across the country. And too many of those voices and the bravery that those victims showed has too often just been ignored. And whilst he says he took action, I'm afraid his party had 10 years to introduce a duty to report child abuse, to make it a responsibility on professionals to report, to make it an offence to cover up child abuse. That was something that I was calling for 10 years ago, the Prime Minister was calling for 12 years ago, and he failed to do it, and we have lost a decade as a result. The independent inquiry into child abuse also ran a 2-year investigation into child sexual exploitation and grooming gangs. And one of the shocking things that it found was less is now known and understood about the prevalence of this appalling crime than prior to 2015. So in that period, from 2015 to 2022, even after we knew about what had happened in Rotherham, and even after Baroness Louise Casey had identified the impact and the failure to address issues about race and ethnicity, again, the previous government went backwards on issues around gathering data and information and the need for proper evidence. And that is why this government has now commissioned Baroness Louise Casey to instigate a rapid review to uncover the prevalence of this appalling crime across the country, with no holds barred in the way that we know that she will conduct this inquiry, to actually fill the gaps in the evidence rather than rerun the same questions without the evidence and the data that we badly need. And I would also point out to him, his party also weakened the disclosure and barring rules in 2012, again making changes that I and the policing minister opposed at the time, and the independent inquiry has recommended reversing in order to keep children safe. Rightly, but again, his party failed to act. Now, I hope that the action that we have announced should be supported right across the country, including the duty to report child abuse, proper penalties to cover it up, stronger sentences for grooming gangs, new rights for victims to get an independent review on reopening their case, new action to reopen historic police investigations, new standard for the police to meet, a new victims and survivors panel, a new audit of the scale and nature of child sexual exploitation and grooming gangs, led by someone who uncovered a lot of the problems in Rotherham, including their failure to confront Pakistani heritage gangs, new ethnicity data to be gathered and published, which he failed to do, new national support for local inquiries, including the Telford model, victims panels, and new work on accountability linked to the Hillsborough law to hold failures to account, because we will strengthen the law to do so, and a proper timetable for taking forward the independent inquiry, because this has to be about action and about protecting children and keeping them safe.